I never saw it coming. End of an era.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Pete here. What seems like years ago now, showrunner Peter Gould promised viewers that the final season of Better Call Saul would change the way we saw Breaking Bad forever. I never doubted him for a minute because why would I? This team has pretty consistently earned my trust, but I also didn't expect how thorough of a job they were setting out to do. A couple hours after finishing Fun and Games, my head is still spinning while I connect the dots. I didn't love what happened in this episode, but I did love how it happened. I loved the way it was set up, I loved watching the characters go through it, and I suppose most importantly, I loved the absolute and unconditional clean break. Can I pull out a much maligned Bravo Vince here? Because one of the other favorite responses in relation to the show, which would bring you an equal amount of vitriol, was to ponder if any certain thing that he did was the moment Jimmy McGill turned into Saul Goodman. And then they just did it. They paired it with one of the most expert time jump edits I've ever seen, and then it was done. Hi there, Saul Goodman, nice to meet you. It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt. The thing this show has done better than anything that came before it is to deliver the inevitable in a way that's still thrilling to watch. We know where things are going, and we'd rather craft elaborate theories that would explain how it might turn out differently, rather than accept what we're about to see. We know that Jimmy and Saul exist inside the same person, but don't want to see him change. We know Kim has to leave him for that to happen, but would rather she'd stay. We believe Mike is different than his cohorts, but don't see as much of that in Breaking Bad, and I could go on. They made us want things to be different, while never not telling us exactly how they'd be. This episode's ending actually begins in the last one, when Lalo and Howard are buried together under the future super lab. There are some obvious takeaways built into that scene. It's a visual representation of the two sides of the story coming together. There's a lawyer laying next to the cartel. It's awful that Howard ends up that way, buried next to his killer nonetheless. And you can't miss Mike's regret as he tells his guys to take it easy with the body. We know Mike's discomfort is about Howard not being in the game. It doesn't fit with the code that he's crafted to help make his working with Gus make sense. The other layer here is that no code can account for the world of destruction that what they do brings. People make choices for what seem like good reasons. Mike wants to provide for his daughter-in-law and his granddaughter because he can't forgive himself for not being able to protect his son. He copes with what he believes he has to do by trying to dictate how far he'd go while he's pursuing that. But in a way, he's just lying to himself. Fast forward to him trying to do the right thing by going to visit Manuel Varga and tell him about his son Nacho, someone who by the end Mike truly cared for. When he tells him that he fell in with some bad people, but was never like them, not really, he had a heart, he's basically describing what he thinks about himself. Papa Varga is able to deliver a truth that Mike can see but not accept. There is no justice in killing Nacho's killers because it's just about revenge. It doesn't change what happened, and what's worse is that it doesn't deliver resolution. The next thing leads to the next thing, and it never ends. I believe it's likely that the better part of Mike understands this, and that means that in Breaking Bad, he's making a conscious decision to overlook that. It's a hell of a way to bring his Better Call Saul story to an end. We know where his story goes from here, and this moment with Manuel will paint a lot of his choices in a different light. This is something that I'll come back around to, but if we're talking about revenge, we might as well talk about what his boss was up to in this episode. Gus is summoned for a quick trip to Mexico where he crushes Hector one more time. As Bolsa was reading his letter, I found myself wondering just how long it would take for him to dictate that to the cousins, and to compare that to how long Eladio took to dismiss it in favor of his top earner. Lalo did such a good job of setting up his fake death that he made his uncle look like a delusional, jealous crank that wasn't getting his way. Hector isn't the type of character that you feel bad for. After all, he relished killing Max in front of Gus a few feet away from where they are, but you do still feel something as the sound of his ringing bell fades as he's carried away. Gus defeated Lalo and he got away with it. We see that start to set in, and we see him do something we've never seen before. He goes out to celebrate. He has a pleasant, uplifting conversation about fine wine that's packed with sexual tension, and it's a complete reversal from the paranoia he's been living with throughout this season. He has the money bottle of wine at home that's just waiting to be shared, and he does allow himself to entertain that fantasy. Only for a minute though. Before his friend returns, he pays up and leaves. And that felt like the conclusion of his involvement in this prequel. We know how single-minded his purpose is. We know where that takes him. And as much as this show did to make him a little scarier, a little more sociopathic, I feel like this made his character a little more sad. He'll give up everything else to get what he wants, and he'll be successful in making the cartel and the Salamanca family pay, and just like this potentially hot romance here, he'll never get to enjoy it. In relation to their plan against Howard, Kim and Jimmy also got what they wanted. They made him look bad, and they got away with it. But their victory came with a very real unintended consequence that led to him being in that hole at the end of episode 8. In the season's first montage, we watch as they're more or less able to go back to their lives in the wake of that disaster, as Mike and his guys make their apartment look like it never happened. After they come home, they briefly move into a hotel that happens to have the same painting above the bed that Walt commented on when he first met Uncle Jack. And when Jimmy parrots Mike's advice from last season that he got from Stacy and their group back in season 3, there's a sense that they may be able to put the whole thing behind them. It's not until they return to HHM that we get to take their temperatures, and it turns out they're ice cold. On the way in, Jimmy says they can get through 20 minutes of anything. And based on a Reddit comment I saw, I went back and checked, and if you skip ahead 20 minutes from where he says that, you'll see Saul in a silk robe managing his comb over in the mirror. Howard's memorial is a high-stress affair. Presumably everyone who knew and loved him is there. I feel like the actor who played Ernesto must not have been available for this, because this would have been the perfect time to show that he's moved on and is thriving after his situation with Chuck. We do get a final scene with Rich Schweikart, and it's funny in a way that they have all these mounted pictures around that look like they could be from Patrick Fabian's personal Instagram account. Things get heavy when they go to pay their respects to his wife, Cheryl. She brings up that her husband told her that Jimmy was harassing him, which we saw Howard do in her brief appearance back in episode 6. It's not a surprise that Jimmy can deflect the accusations while appearing to be earnest and respectful. He knocks it out of the park just like you'd expect. Still, Cheryl can't believe Howard was on drugs and starts to get upset. This creates a situation where Kim has to step up with a lie that goes above and beyond. She comes up with exactly what's needed, while at the same time, it's something you'd never want this character to be involved with. She doesn't just make up a story that never happened, which ends up being corroborated by Cliff's inability to answer, which of course is related to their scam, but when Cheryl starts to believe it, she leans in to pretend she's on her side, and well, that's difficult to watch. And I think what's worse than the aftermath of what their choices have led to, all of this that's happening in these last couple of episodes, what's worse is that they're just so damn good at doing this. As they go out to the parking garage, we get a glimpse of the spot where we first saw them interact in that famous scene in the first episode of the series, and then Jimmy tries to put a positive spin on things. Then we get what I think is the best Rhea Seehorn as Kim scene in the entire series. I know, recency bias, but in this shot where she doesn't say anything, where she just looks at her husband and contemplates what he just said before she moves closer to kiss him, I knew that it was over. It takes a second to hit, but it feels impossible to miss. Not to be outdone, Bob Odenkirk does a fantastic job of letting us see that Jimmy knows it too after she drives away, even if he's not ready to accept it. Because we're not ready to either, they give us a courtroom scene to drive it home ever so slowly. By the time the judge has just about had it with her not wanting to move forward with her current case, Kim admits that she's no longer a lawyer. At first, I was confused about why she made this step. If you don't want to practice, fine. But why make it official? I think this comes back to the idea of justice that we heard Papa Varga bring up. Part of this quest to take down Howard was born in the belief that Kim could decide who deserves it. What's a career setback for a powerful lawyer in comparison to all the help that she could give to underprivileged people? And she wasn't necessarily wrong, all things considered. Tipping the scales in the other direction would amount to some good. And even Howard realized that he would bounce back before he died. I think she realized the part that Manuel pointed out to Mike, that it never ends. And when things go as wrong as they did, and you have to live with the consequences of your choices, you can't continue to tip the scales to try to make up for it. Jimmy races home after he gets the news that she withdrew from the bar, and I liked how they showed us that her mind was made up as she calmly watches him pull into this parking spot and then mostly just listens as he freaks out. It's hard to watch for us, but his reaction is to be expected. When he bursts into their room to see that she's packing to leave, she brings up him asking if he was bad for her. And if you recall that scene, that's where she decided that she was going to do something to try to lift his spirits, which eventually sets things in motion for going after Howard. She assures Jimmy that that's not the problem, that the truth is that they're bad for each other. And when he starts to buckle under the weight, she says, "Jimmy, I have had the time of my life with you, but we are bad for everyone around us. Other people suffer because of us. Apart, we're okay, but together, we're poison." This is followed by a wonderfully painful bit of pleading that ends with Jimmy finally saying "I love you" for the first time on screen. And this is where you see her break a little as she tears up and says, "But so what?" And as devastating as this is, I think it shows how genuine their feelings are for each other. It doesn't play like this is his first time ever saying this out loud, and her coming back with a "so what." I think it drives home the idea that they say it to each other all the time off screen, and that this breakup isn't about them not feeling that way anymore. They went out of their way to show just how real that was in the last episode, and this conversation and her reasoning for the breakup all reinforces that. It's not tragic because they're falling out of love. It's that way because they are in love, and you understand that they'll continue to feel that way, but they can't be together. If that wasn't enough, when pushed about what happened to Howard not being her fault, Kim confesses that she knew. She tells him that she kept this a secret because she knew what he'd do, and that would lead to them breaking up, which is something she didn't want because she was having too much fun. On some level, Jimmy understands this and realizes there's nothing else he can say. We just watch his heart crumble from behind as she goes to the room and finishes her packing. It's the scene I was joking about in the beginning, and after that incredible jump to him waking up on a rotating bed with a sex worker, we know his transformation is complete. This flash forward is more than a stinger. It fully immerses us in the Breaking Bad timeline before the episode ends. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on, but the real point is that this is what his life looks like behind the scenes. It's something that we never got a look at in the original series, and it works really well to show how different he is now that Kim is no longer in his life. It makes sense when you look at everything that happened, and if you ever thought during the series that you couldn't wait to get Saul back, how do you feel about it now? I doubt that we've seen Kim for the last time. There's the obvious chance of her coming back during the Gene timeline, and I think it's possible that with 4 episodes to go that there could be even some scenes to show what her post-Albuquerque life looks like. For Saul, we're crossing over into old territory, but it still feels like anything could happen. Plus, there's still that call on his birthday that he mentioned in the 405 teaser. At this point, she still seems like the most likely person to be calling, which means that they aren't completely out of contact. I thought they did a fantastic job of hitting each point on the way to this conclusion. You hate to see it, but it was amazing to watch. Using Mike and Gus to show where revenge and this skewed sense of justice takes you, and then bringing it all back around to Kim's choices, worked so much better than you would have guessed it could. As it became clear that Kim would probably not be around past this episode, I was at a place where I didn't like any of the options. Partly because I didn't want the relationship to end, but more because most of the popular ones would require something drastic to happen at best, or at worst have someone or something make that decision for her. I truly appreciate that they decided to go with the idea that a character can be more than one thing at the same time. I think that this totally tracks with the Kim we've gotten to know, even though she was so committed to the scam. She seemed proof that Jimmy would never be able to do it. And I think part of what's always been interesting about these two is that despite being unbelievably capable on their own, they still needed each other. It makes it tough to watch her make this decision knowing that. And if you can't be sure where it leads, or knowing what this might do to this person that she cares about, at least you can say that she did what she had to do by herself. And I think that's a good place to leave things. Let me know in the comments what you thought about the episode, what you think about the time jump, and if we've seen the last of Kim. This is the type of episode that the more I think about it, the more it reveals. It just keeps going. So make sure you join us for the live stream Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, because I'm sure there'll be a lot more to say when we get there. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.